Obviously wanted to think about. What are some of the common landmines you can sidestep? Assuming you have license, just because of your position, to assess individual in the C-suite. That's legitimate position power. You need to build personal power. And the way you do that is, as I built that when I went to Hay as a consulting psychologist, is I helped people predict both sides of the ledger, the person's pluses, the minuses, and if we go with this mixed package, which we all are, here's the potential landmines. If they get into certain situations, this is when they're going to go south. And when you can start assessing people and help the executives predict that, and then it happens, your credibility goes way, 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 way up. Again, going back to that balanced view. Not being explicit about the boundaries and limits of confidentiality. This is where at the end of the conversation somebody says to you, but of course you can't discuss this with so-and-so. Did I just get put into a catch-22? A catch-22 is I'm going to tell you something crazy and then I'm going to tell you can't tell anybody about it. You need to be very explicit that when people come in and talk to you, what are the limits of confidentiality? Because at some point, a lot of those executives say, how far is this going to go? And is this going to hurt me in some way? Not walking the talk. Number 3, I had a recent experience with a corporation where the CFO was a recent CFO of a large automobile company, very sophisticated, COO, a number of other people. They came in and they decided, we're going to start a whole developmental trend, change the culture in the organization. All the people on the C-suite are going to go through 360s, get feedback, and get the development plan so that we can turn around to the employees and said, it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you. And who was the one person who threw their body in front of it? Chief Human Resource Officer. He was afraid of what he was going to hear in 360 feedback because he knew he got off to a bad start. It didn't get better. I can tell you it didn't get better. So you got to walk the talk. If it's good enough for everybody else, you probably should be modeling it. Do not assume that you know how you are perceived by others on the executive team or elsewhere. It's really interesting to me. I have the benefit of doing 360s as an external person. And I give feedback sometimes with some comments and titles, and people will say, I know who said that. Well, I actually did research a few years ago. 50% of the time they'll be right and 50% of the time they'll be wrong, but on a quote-by-quote basis, they don't know which one it is. I tell them, feedback is a gift, be quiet, figure out what the implications are. In what situations, with what stakeholders, with what kinds of outcomes, right? And what you find out is some of the people that you thought were going to give very glowing reports, undress them as well. They say, yeah, he's great at sales, but my God, he cannot develop his people out of a paper bag. I mean, it's just, And the people that you thought were going to be highly critical come back and say, but you know what? He can get some people who are stumbling so revved up and inspired that they get over their own self-limitations and they really rise to the occasion. Don't expect that you know what other people perceive about you. Maybe you want to do a 360 at some point for yourself. Number 5, we talked about a little bit about don't confuse the legitimacy of the role with personal credibility and trust. You can do that more by demonstrating it. Number 6 is great. Let's do development. Okay, I had this real experience a couple of years ago. Let's go do the XYZ program. Okay, and we get our ticket punched and we go off. Not based on any developmental need assessment whatsoever. We don't know how are we going to ever think about whether we were successful or not. And forgetting to use the entire model, which is I want to get somebody dissatisfied with their current state. I want them to look at the future state. And I want to give them some first steps of how they're going to get there. Here's another one that I just wanted to raise because I see this a lot. Do not let yourself be hijacked. If you want to lose credibility, allow yourself to get into the fractioning in the business team. Maintain your independent point of view. And you can tell people that you understand their different points of view. You can understand why they have it, but you don't necessarily hold that point of view, and that's a constructive part of being a part of the team. The CEO will ask you. I actually had a CEO who used to turn to me in a meeting when I was supposed to be facilitating and say, and Gary, I think you'll agree with me if. The implication being, don't disagree with me. And when he was done, I had to say, I don't hold that point of view, with all due respect, and I'll tell you why. The minute you start caving in on getting captured or pirated by other people, you lose some of your credibility. We talked a bit about being duped into double binds. So here's my questions for you. What are the developmental needs of the senior executive team as individuals or as a team? What do they need to do more of, less of, or do in a different way? It might be a good exercise for you to sit down when you have some moments on a weekend, you're not torn in 20 different directions, and kind of put pencil to paper and figure out what would that really look like, and see how good you are, and see how specific you can be. How do you assess? How do you make that assessment? What do you look at? What data do you look at? What observations do you make about behavior? What history do you, or are you playing just old tapes from a long time ago? Do you know and manage how other people perceive you? A lot of executives forget that they're on 24/7. There are employees that only see you as a senior executive for 30 seconds every 6 months. They know who you are, and by how you comport yourself, they're trying to figure out whether, should I be looking for another job? Are we doing okay? Do they have their arms around the business? I have senior executives who walk into the, it doesn't mean that everybody has to be charismatic, but I have senior executives who walk into the building and don't acknowledge anybody. I have people forget. They make side comments to people and jokes that other people hear. I've actually had to tell a CEO to stop going to strip bars. People do not think about the fact that they are on stage 24/7, and what would people think if they saw certain sound bites that they cannot interpret. So how does that also then apply to you? Are you, and the other part of that is, are you maintaining balanced assessments of others? Are you performing in ways that are self-defeating? Do you have blind spots? Do you have your own demons that you need to manage? What are they? And do you influence others through just one or two influence tactics? There are 10 that have been identified in the research. Are you only using one or two tools in the toolbox, or are you using a bunch of them? Logical persuasion and facts only work 50% of the time. Necessary but not sufficient. If you have very strong values, if you think it's very important that we pay attention to how this has impact on people, and I know that, I'm going to frame how I present to you why you should help me do what I want to do, based on the fact that it's going to help employees and we're going to be more sensitive to the impact. I know I'm adjusting my influence style to the way that she prefers to be influenced, not just taking the same tools out where I've got a hammer and the world becomes a nail. What do you use? Are you self-aware about which tactics that you use in influencing others? How would you improve in those performance areas? And my last favorite question, ultimately, who's responsible for the C-suite, either as individuals or as a team? How you answer that question has lots of implications. And it can be sort of a checkout to be able to say, well, it's everybody. Well, I'm not sure what that helps us get to the accountability for. Right, then there's no accountability.
It's everybody. It's not.
Right, exactly. I'm done with the presentation. I'm just showing this to you. This is my mini paid announcement. Starting in the recession in 2008, while I was out there in the field coaching people, what I heard was people deeper in the organization saying, I got a lot of employees looking over my shoulder. Nobody knows if they got a job a couple months from now. They see the numbers in the newspaper and it doesn't look good. HR is distracted with other things, or we don't have the resources to train people. We're not going to put people through a big training program, yada, yada, yada. And people are going, I'm not getting any help. So I put this together. It's very inexpensive. It's a DVD and a couple of CDs. The DVD is really kind of a video for people to talk them through what are employees' reactions to job uncertainty around them. So what are the things we focus on? And then what are the leadership behaviors you can exhibit to address those employee concerns? And then the CDs are just an audio thing that if you're driving in the car on the way to work, you can pop one of those puppies in and think about, okay, what am I going to be doing today? I made it very inexpensive. It's sort of one of my things to just try and help folks, because there was no life preservers out there to help people. So that's my 2 seconds on, if you want more stuff, you can find it on Amazon. Comments, questions, was this helpful? Were you able to get a couple of nuggets out of this? Oh, the end of the story. Thank you very much. So he started to make the interpersonal changes. It was not easy. He really had to come back to his employees and do a mea culpa. I got this feedback. I was intending to do this. I really didn't do it very well. As a matter of fact, I did damage. You're going to have to help me get there. I'm going to try some things. I can't guarantee I'm going to be good right away. because I'm leaving old behavior that's very comfortable to me. My coach has told me this is what good behavior looks like. I don't know how I'm going to get from here over to there. So give me a little time. Be patient with me. I'm not going to get it right at first. And oh, by the way, if you see me doing things, if my intention is to help develop you, and you see me doing things where I'm getting in my own way, feel free to stop me and tell me. Because I'm trying to, I'm trying to learn how to do that. And I'm not going to get there all of a sudden. 3 years, the board did its usual due diligence. They called into the organization, talked to people at all different levels. How's he perceived? They're trying to get recent tapes, what's been going on with him. They talked to his peers, and of course they talked to the CEO, who still didn't think he was ready, but they weren't going to believe him. The CEO resigned. They made him CEO. He was CEO for 5 years. He's now retired. He now sits on a bunch of boards. And interestingly, from the time he became the CEO, he and I did not have contact. He didn't ask for help at all during that period of time. The minute he retired, I got an email from him and a request to be his LinkedIn buddy. Something happened to this guy, and he wanted to stay in touch. So he was very successful. He was CEO for about the time, typical time for a CEO. CEOs have about 5 quarters to come in, figure out. They think they know what's going on in the business, even if they're an insider. It's a 3-wave theory. This is my next thing I'm writing, but it's based on research that was done about 20 years ago. It's also Michael Watkins, who did the first 90 days, knew about this stuff, but Michael figured he could sell more books if it was for everybody for the first 90 days. This is more complex, but it's basically, you think you know the business and the levers to pull, you pull them and you go, oh, the easy things are hard and the hard things are easy. I guess I don't really have my arms around this yet. I need to do a real deep dive with my executive team to figure out what the root cause, because the resistance involves more people, it's more intractable, and it's going to take more time than I ever imagined. You finally figure out what the hand is that you've been dealt. By the end of 5 quarters, you put together a plan of how we're going to implement the changes to get there, because you really have a very good diagnostic of the organization. And what you've been testing all that time is the organization's ability to change and a leader's ability to lead change. And what you find is some people can't lead change, and you have to change out your executive team. At the end of 5 quarters, you get there, and then you start your second wave of change, which is all of that plan. And then the third wave of change is after you get all that in place, it's fine-tuning. It's just once we got it running, now let's fine-tune it. Takes from beginning to, so the first wave is about usually 4 to 6 months. Second wave is another 9 to 14 months. So then you get into the implementation. It's about 2 to 3 years. So by the time a CEO gets to the end of the 4th or 5th year, they've kind of run their race, and it's based on a very strongly held point of view about the business. And that's why they need to have fresh eyes come in, because somebody else needs to take a hard look at the business from a different perspective, because they're so wedded at that point to their point of view. So he was very successful, but the end of the story is, God bless him, the guy rose up and just said, I'm going to face the demon right in the eyes, and it took him 3 or 4 years, but he did it. May you be as successful in influencing your people as well. Questions, comments?
The slide presentation with some of the results and that type of thing, you may have mentioned that before. That's available to us.
All you have to do is send an email to me. I'll send you a copy. I haven't arranged with the association yet. I'll give them a copy as well. But it's just as easy just to contact me and I'll send it to you. Good. Thank you.